Let's take our seats, please. Okay, 31. That includes the one standing in the hallway back there? Yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, before we call the business meeting to order, I'd like to have Pastor come up and have the prayer before we start.
Father, we thank you for this opportunity to consider the future of our church and the momentous things that you have in store for us, Lord. Give us all wisdom. As we've been studying throughout this whole year in Proverbs, give us all wisdom and discernment, how best to use the resources that you've given us with our kids' ministry and other aspects of our church, so that we can all glorify you in what we say and what we do. We ask this in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Call the meeting to order, and the first order of business will be the clerk's report, so I'll have Cindy Nisley come up and read our last business meeting minutes.
We opened the meeting with prayer. Pastor Nathan Justice called the meeting to order. Bill Smith, moderator. There was 40 in attendance. Treasurer's report by Chris Baker. Comments: the church finances through 4/25 of 2026 explained. Property taxes over budget by $48. Property insurance under budget $400. Currently, the church is in the negative $15 weekly. Expenses of $600 to IRS for the official IRS determination letter for tax exempt status. Expense of $575 to attorney firm of Harrelson and Harrelson, Troy, Ohio, for preparation of retention bonus agreement for Pastor Nathan Justice. Motion to accept Treasurer's report, Marvin Ely, second by Herman Kaiser, motion carried. Pastor Nathan Justice proposed amendments to the church articles incorporation and proposed bylaw language change. Comments: 1899 original articles of incorporation needed amended. $50 fee to amend the state website. Bylaw language changed and is attached. Needed an official IRS letter for the church to be listed as tax exempt organization, listed above in the treasurer's report as an expenditure of $600. Motion to adopt the proposed amendments to the church's article of incorporation and proposed bylaw language changed. Debbie Meek, second by Chuck Mars. Motion carried with one dissenting vote. Pastor Nathan Justice updated the congregation on a church conference he attended on April 15th and 16th, 2026 through the Greater Dayton Association of Baptists. Future conferences planned to equip churches to multiple attendees. He encouraged us as a church to have a vision for missions, to live intentionally as disciples for Jesus to reach others with the gospel. Old business, none. New business, none. A motion to adjourn meeting, Chris Baker, second by Marvin Ely, motion carried, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Cindy. I'd like to have a motion to accept and approve the reading of the quarterly business meeting minutes from April the 26th of 2026. Ron Neiswanger, is there a second? Okay, Liz? Okay. All in favor of the approval of the minutes as read, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Okay. All right. Next up is Chris Baker. He's going to go over the treasurer's report. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to start with income. We're averaging $2,757.69 a week. Project that out to the end of the year, we'll be just under $10,000 that we had budgeted. Good thing about the income, we are at 18% of what we total bring in is going to missions. I think that's awesome. Any questions on income? Okay, we'll go down to Christian education. The only thing I have to say about that one is the children's ministry. It shows we're over budget. We're not. We brought in over $1,800 so far from offerings to the mission or to the youth. So we are actually in the good for over 1,600. So, any questions on Christian education? Okay, we'll go down to church property. I have nothing to talk about on that one. Does anybody have any questions? Higher education, I have nothing. Any questions on that? Okay, missions, like I said, we're given 18%, so that's awesome. Any questions on missions? All right, pastors ministry. Oh, sorry, I gotta go back to, which one was it? Oh, no, that's a little bit, never mind. So the only thing I have on pastor's salary and everything, and he doesn't know yet, but you're gonna get 6 more cents a mile because the IRS changed that from 70 cents to 76 cents. So when you figure that up, add 6 more cents. So any questions on his section? Awesome. Worship service, I got nothing. Oh, no, I do, I'm sorry. I did mark it. Memos and office supplies, we kind of already went over it. We're over because that's where we put the IRS fee and the lawyer fee. We stuck it in there. Because we have actually no section for it, so we just stuck it in with office. Any questions on that section? Okay. So the ending balance as of 7/1/26 for checking is $144,865.03. The debit card is $1,081.86. And net income right now, we're at negative $4,060.55. So it's written on the bottom. Net income to negative $4,060.55. Second page bottom. Okay. Any questions? All right.
Any other questions or comments before I call for the vote to accept the report? Okay, not, I'd entertain a motion to accept the treasurer's report. Mark Deal. And Jake, you want to be the second? Okay. Mark Deal made the motion. Jake Eisling was the second. All in favor of accepting the treasurer's report for the 6-month period ending June 30th, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Okay. The trustees just wanted me to give an update real quick, and I won't take much time. There's 3 things that the trustees are working on, one of which is, we've talked about it before, it's the tuck pointing for the church on the front as well as on the sides. Tuck pointing is the replacement of damaged and lost mortar joints in our concrete. And we've got 2 quotes, and we're waiting on an update on a 3rd one, and that has to be reviewed by the trustees, and then they'll come forward at a later date with a proposal to the church on that. And then also looking to repair, it's just minor repair to the baptistry, and then also painting that, and we'll get that done in the near future. It shouldn't take, it's minimal expense as far as there's a valve that's leaking, and the baptistry has to be sanded down and repainted. And then lastly, louvers on the bell tower, and they need probably replaced, not repaired, but replaced. And that's something that Ron Neiswanger is saying that he's wanting to do. I'm trying to talk him out of it, because people 65 and older shouldn't be up on roofs, but that's just me. But those are the 3 things that the trustees are working on at this time. So that's all I have on that. Is there any questions? Okay, Pastor, it's up to your turn.
So my portion will consist of first talking about the proposed new child safeguarding policy, and then after we take a vote on that and finish that business, I'm going to summarize some of the discussion that the deacons and trustees had together back on June 14th during our combined meeting, where we talked through some critiques that they had all heard from different members of the church about the way that our worship services have been running, and ways that we might be able to change and improve those. But I do want to start with the child care policy first. So first, does everyone have a copy? There's a big stack of them over here if people don't have a copy. I will be referring to some pages in it, so if you don't have one, go ahead and grab one. But some of you, I've heard questions about where I got some of the information here for this policy. A lot of the language I got out of this book, the Child Safeguarding Policy Guide for Churches and Ministries by Basil Chavidian and Shira M. Berkovitz. Basil Chavidian is a former child abuse prosecutor, so he's an attorney by trade, and he is the founder and executive director of an organization called GRACE, which is an acronym for Godly Response to Abuse in the Christian Environment. He's also one of the grandchildren of Billy Graham, so that's how he kind of, one of the reasons why he came to prominence. But I used a lot of the same sample language that he recommends in this book in our policy, because I thought it was wise. And I also looked at other churches and their safeguarding policies and looked at the way that they were structuring their children's ministries and got some insight from them and combined it all together in a way that would, I think, best fit our church and our situation. I've also heard that there's some questions about why we need such a thick policy right now, considering the size of our church and the small number of children that we have here. I think, by analogy, we have fire extinguishers all around the building, not because we need them every single week, but in case we need them, in case an emergency were to break out and we would need to solve it. In the same way, much of the information in this safeguarding policy is something that ideally we're never going to have to refer to. We won't have to work through a case of abuse in our congregation. But just like we have fire extinguishers just in case, we have this policy that's very detailed and lays out a comprehensive policy that we can follow in case something like that were to happen, that'd be able to guide us when in a lot of the situations people are stressed and anxious and they're not thinking clearly, and having a clear guideline like this will be beneficial. I also would want to recognize that a lot of this in here, especially the health and safety guidelines that are included, this is just standard operating procedure for most churches today. All the churches that I checked had similar guidelines to what I've included here. And so I'm just kind of updating our church to current standards are now across to the evangelical church environment. I'm not going to read through or discuss the entire policy in detail here, because I'm assuming that most of you who are interested, who are already working in the kids ministry, will have already picked up a copy and read through it yourself. But I will give a brief outline. The first 4 pages include a brief introduction to definitions and terms, and pages 3 and 4 have guidelines for the selection of workers, which I will come back to. That is something I want to discuss with you all. But then the rest of page 4 through page 8 is all about classroom management and classroom-related policies. Pages 8 through 10 are general health and safety guidelines. Then pages 10 through 15 are policy violations. So if someone is trying to break the policy, or if we have an active case of abuse in the church, that's the whole process of how we work through that. Then on pages 16 and 17, I have 2 pages discussing the possibility of child sex offenders in the church, whether if they started to regularly attend, how we would approach that. There are few segments of humanity today in our current culture that everyone unanimously agrees are shameful and evil, and child sex offenders would be on that list. But child sex offenders also need the gospel. And according to the sex offender registry, there are 42 offenders within a 5-mile radius of the church. And that radius includes downtown Piqua and Troy. It's not just out here in the country. So most of them are in the general area, not directly around the church. But if one of those persons did show up to the church and was interested in becoming a Christian, then I would want to give them as much room as is reasonably possible to come into contact with the gospel and to worship Jesus faithfully. So I have 2 pages there. The last pages 18 through 22 are appendices that I reference in other portions of the policy that give more detailed information. And then the last page is the annual policy evaluation. And for those of you who've read through this policy, you've noticed that there's several references to a children's ministry committee throughout this policy. It is not a committee that we currently have as part of our constitution and bylaws, but I am simply referring to the combination of the deacons and the Board of Education as the Children's Ministry Committee. And so whether we want to officially make that a separate committee in our bylaws, that's something we can discuss, or if we just want to use that as a catch-all term for combined meetings of deacons and Board of Education, I'm fine with that as well. But as part of this policy, once a year, the deacons and the Board of Education will come together and look over the policy, see if we want to make any changes to it, look at any cases of policy violations that we may have seen over the course of the year, basically review the whole year and decide if there's anything that we need to do. And then we would sign off on it at the end of each year and keep updating that year by year. So that's the brief summary of the policy. The things I wanted to bring up for discussion first are on pages 3 and 4, the selection of workers criteria. These are criteria that I pulled from this book by Boss Javidian. These were all things that he recommended. And as with the rest of this policy, all of these items are up for revision if we want to change things. The way I have it set up, there's a 6-month rule, just as we require, if someone were to attend for 6 months, then they would be allowed to vote on church business. I'm adopting that same rule here. I'd want someone to attend for 6 months before they're allowed to volunteer with children, so that we have a better idea of who they are and can evaluate them and their character before they would apply. Then there's a written application. There's a possibility of a personal interview with the candidate if the Children's Ministry Committee deems it necessary. There's reference checks that we might do if the Ministry Committee deems it necessary. The main thing that I wanted to get your feedback on was the criminal background check. So Boz Dravidian's recommendation was to do a local, state, and federal background check for candidates. Now, we have a subscription to an organization called Ministry Safe, and they do background checks for churches and ministries, and they have pricing levels for the different background checks. And the very basic one that's only $10, it's a multi-jurisdictional database search that basically any background check company is going to offer as a product. But the main caveat with that search is that it has very significant limitations because of how incomplete the data is in a lot of the databases that those checks do. And so Ministry Safe itself recommends at the very least doing a county records search, because the majority of records related to sexual abuse and violent behaviors are prosecuted and maintained at the county level. And this county record search would go back at least 7 years in a person's history and check and see if they've committed any crimes that are recorded at the county level. That's level 3, according to their pricing guideline. And level 3 is $19 per background check. But there's also a federal background check that is particularly relevant for charges related to pornographic exploitation of children or internet charges for enticing minors. That's prosecuted at the federal level. And so that level of search is $30. And then they offer a statewide records search where it expands just beyond, for instance, it would be Miami County, expands to all the counties in the state, checking all the records in those different counties. That is the highest cost level, and that is $70 per background check. So I know with the size of our church and the limitations of our income, I would understand people not wanting to do all 3 levels of local, state, and federal background check because of it being $70 per check. But I did want to get people's feedback on whether we wanted to restrict the search to the county level at the $19 price or include the federal search at the $30 price. And that's fine, I'll just open the floor for comments. Yeah.
I would recommend doing the state and the federal, because like you said, they're prosecuted for any crime and it's just a felony, and it's just gonna show up in the state, it won't show up in the federal. So if you did a federal, it wouldn't show up.
Mhm.
If it's child porn, then that goes federal, and it won't show up on the state. So I recommend at least both of those.
Okay. So the county level and the federal level? Okay. And just to be clear, the level 5 that has the $30 charge, that includes the county search. So it's all-inclusive price for county search and federal search, and the multi-jurisdictional basic search. Yeah, so at the top of on page 3, under the main title, Selection of Workers, it says, all volunteers and helpers who desire to work with the children participating in our programs and activities will be screened. So any paid staff, at the very least deacons, I have deaconesses included here, but now thinking about it, since the deaconesses don't have direct relation over kids, I might remove that. But any pastors or elders will be screened as part of the appointment or hiring process. So the background check would happen for any paid staff, myself, and then the deacons, according to the guidelines here. Because the paid staff is naturally going to have some responsibility over kids, and then myself and the deacons, as people of spiritual authority in the church, we have more access to children, and so there's a higher standard that we have to hold ourselves to. Yeah, Chris.
So my 9 years of investigating these crimes, we've never had one at a church. And that's because 90% of the churches have policies like this to help protect the children. And yeah, 80% of the children are deals. And most of the deals are the ones with kids, but we don't know. A year from now, we might have a bunch more kids in there and more people, and we might not be able to know those people as well. And if they're working with children, something does happen. The church can get in a lot of trouble if we don't have a policy like this. So I recommend the policy because, like I said, most churches have this, and that's why they don't have those issues.
Yeah, Darren.
Somebody already has some kind of background check or something, would that be considered adequate? Case in point, I have security clearance.
Yeah.
So if somebody's coming in and has something like that, those look at different things. So is there something that indicates that's going to be acceptable, not, what they need to provide, so forth?
Yeah, there's no specific language in this section of the policy at this point that considers someone having a background check as part of work or something like that. I think, to your point though, especially the federal government workers and nurses and other medical fields have similar very stringent background checks. Schools. Yeah. So in those cases, and we can add language to the section, I would be comfortable using those background checks that they've done for work as a substitute for the check that we're intending here. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm fine adding language for that into the section of the policy. Yeah. Mark? Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I'd say each volunteer, it's going to be a case-by-case basis. So although the background check language here applies to all people, the language about the interview and reference checks and things, like I mentioned, we may schedule and conduct a face-to-face interview. So the level of scrutiny that a candidate will receive will depend on the candidate. And like you mentioned, Mark, with our current volunteers having served here for so long, I think that there's a lower level of scrutiny necessary than a brand new person coming in and serving. But if we do pass this policy today, this will be a slow roll implementation of the process. I'd like to have everything kind of set in place by the time we end August, sort of before we have our back to school celebration with LifeWise, which I'll talk about later. But we'll slowly kind of work on getting everything implemented over the upcoming weeks if we pass it today. Yeah, Nancy. Yes, so at the first paragraph underneath the title selection of workers, it says at the end of that paragraph that the following selection process must be followed for new workers, and screening procedures will be repeated every 5 years. So I tried to make it to where there's enough time to where it's not like constantly getting checked, but also within enough distance to where we're still being wise about checking in on our workers.
Has this had any legal review at all?
Yes, my dad looked over it. And obviously he's been an attorney for over 30 years, so he gave me feedback on all aspects of the policy. I also ran it by the deacons and the Board of Education and got their feedback on it, so I've had 3 different layers of feedback on it so far. Mhm. Thank you. Yeah. And LifeWise has a very similar policy for their organization as well. They require all their paid staff to get background checked at like the FBI level. And they have a lot of similar policies and guidelines that we have here. So it's really matching up with what they're providing with their ministry too. I guess maybe to start, before we vote on the whole policy, can we do a vocal vote just on the agreement to do the level 5 of the county and federal background check? Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yeah, so I guess we could vote on changing the language to, instead of saying local, state, and federal criminal records check, we can say a criminal records check is required for these people, and the level of check will be determined case by case by the Children's Ministry Committee. We could change the language to something along those lines. I guess we can go and do a voice vote on that.
On just I thought your dad said that we didn't really need to do that.
Or are you saying that the language is fine as it is, or would you make that change to what I just said? In the version I got printed off and handed out, it says local, state, and federal. So it's assuming that all three will be done. That is on page 3. Subheading E at the bottom of the page. Yes, right now the language is read as if all three will be required of all the people listed there. Okay.
Chris was right that I think these false forward because they have broader scopes. Federal scope is broader, it will cover the entire United States in terms of federal. Right. The state's going to cover all county, Dade County, Mississippi, Ohio. The local might just cover just this local area. So, and state and federal probably makes sense. Trying to cover everything to be both because of different jurisdictions and different laws will apply. So I agree with that part. I just, as you heard from others, it seems like some are saying that we don't need to spend money for certain people. And I think if you eliminated those qualifying adjectives in front of a criminal, you would give yourself a left.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
As I've been working on this process for the voting, and we're required under our bylaws to have a 65% of affirmation of voting for when a casting a ballot or a vote for any particular item. And I think in just reading and going through Robert's Rules of Order, the proper way, we normally, on 99% of our voting, we use voice vote, and there's no issues at all. But on important decisions like this, and for us to hit the 65%, I'm thinking that it's important that we consider using a ballot to make that calculation proper so that we have our records of that. And in order for us to do that properly, I need not only a motion and a second from the floor to switch from voice vote to a ballot, and then we'll vote on that, and all it takes is a majority of approval, and then we'll pass out the ballots. Any questions?
That's for the policy as well.
Right, that's on the policy as whole, yeah. But I don't know that we have to, on this, can't we make those corrections?
Just after the fact.
Yeah,
So normally what you would do is someone would put a motion on the floor to approve policy as it's written.
okay,
Someone would make a motion to amend the motion.
as it is,
So like
okay.
you would vote on the amendment motion first, and then you would come back and you would vote on the motion for the policy as amended. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
So,
You need a ballot vote
to make those changes? Oh, okay, okay,
And then someone makes another motion to amend the policy. You vote on the amendment first, then you come back and you vote on the entire amended policy.
oh my goodness. How, yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. Basically, approve the policy or decline.
As long as you use that ballot at the end of the process, when you're trying to approve the entire policy, I think it'd be fine, but under Robert's Rule of Order, you need to get a motion on the floor to be considered and have.
Right,
I think the motion would be for the entire policy as written right now to be considered.
okay. Yeah,
Before that gets voted on, that's seconded, before that gets voted on, someone else would make a motion to amend it. And then that will get seconded and voted on the amendment, and then you come back and you address the entire policy as amended.
okay, okay. So what does the congregation, would you want to do just voice vote on first part of the policy? Yeah, we have to have a motion on the floor. Okay, Sue has made a motion for the policy to be approved. Is there a second? Terry, we have first and second. We call for a vote.
I would make a motion that we amend the policy to eliminate
Okay,
Criminal, local.
state and federal before the word criminal on page 3. This would be subpart E of selection of workers. That we amend subpart E of selection of workers to remove the words local, state, and federal before the words criminal records check.
okay,
It will say a criminal records check is required. It will not tell you necessarily.
okay, all right.
And I'm sorry to add more to the mix, but there would be a second part to the amendment because, Mom, the suggestion that you had made about the two adults in the classroom, you had mentioned to me before. On page 5, there's a 2 adults rule. And then do a second one. Okay. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we've got 2 motions on the floor? No, or did you? Okay. Okay, all right. Okay. Did everyone hear the motions that is out there on the floor? We've got some folks that have not heard it, so, Steve, you did the first one, right?
So I have made a motion to amend the policy just to remove the words local, state, and federal in front of the word criminal records check. That gives the deans and the Board of Education latitude to decide what sort of criminal record check should be done for each person that's going to be working with the children. Because there may be some people who don't need one, who don't need, a broad one because of how the girls work, or they already have that sort of thing. So if the people are really making this decision, that was my motion, to amend it, that's it. Sue seconded that, so that the vote to you would be to just eliminate those 3 words.
Say a criminal background check, is the new one.
If I eliminate those 3 words, it'll read appropriate. Anybody have questions about that?
All right. Is everyone ready to go for a voice vote on that motion that is on the floor? All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. All right.
All right, we'll make that amendment. One thing that my mom had brought to my attention on page 5, under the classroom management guidelines, I have in place a 2 adult rule. In the first sentence of that paragraph under 2 adult rule, it says that it is our goal that a minimum of 2 unrelated adult workers will be in attendance at all times when children are being supervised during our children's ministry programs and activities. My mom's question about that was, with the current state of our children's program and there being limited numbers of people who can volunteer, that she and my dad, as a married couple, would be happy to volunteer together and help teach the children's class on Sundays. And so the requirement of 2 unrelated adult workers would prevent them from volunteering together because they're married. My thought is that the language as it stands is, it is our goal that the minimum is 2 unrelated adult workers, but as it says in the following sentence, some youth classes may only have 1 adult teacher in attendance during the class session, so there's an exception for that. I think there could be a similar exception where if we don't have enough people who are unrelated to serve as a volunteer, then in those cases, a married couple serving as a volunteer is okay, but our ultimate goal is to get to the point where we're having 2 unrelated adult workers teaching the class together. And the reason for that provision is if there was a situation where a husband was harming a child and his wife was serving with him, then his wife might feel tension or anxiety about coming forward and announcing or exposing the abuse for fear of backlash from her spouse. And so having that provision for ideally 2 unrelated people being there is that you eliminate the possibility of any coercion or anxiety about exposing that abuse to myself or the deacons or other people's in leadership. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
The likelihood is extremely low, I agree,
Mhm.
but just thinking of the worst case scenario. If a husband is accused of something, the wife can say nothing, and not take on and vice versa.
Yeah. So that's why I have as the goal being 2 unrelated workers, is to prevent those types of situations ideally. So I don't think that necessarily would need an amendment. Yeah. So I think we should be okay as it stands to go ahead and move forward with doing the ballot vote, unless, does anyone else have any other questions about the policy before we do that ballot vote? All right, then I guess we can go and get that started.
I don't know what happened to mine, but anyway, that's your stuff here. I know I'm talking about my kids thing. But
No,
anyway.
I think this is it here.
Oh, okay, all right. So at this point, we are going to do a ballot vote on the final acceptance of this policy that would be made a part of our church overall policies with regard to child safeguarding. So, Chris? Okay. That's fine.
Everybody got one?
So while those are being gathered and counted, I will go ahead and transition to that combined deacons trustees meeting that we had about a month and a half ago. In general, there were three specific critiques that the deacons and trustees heard from the congregation from various people. And then there was also a general concern about the declining attendance numbers at the church. So I'm going to break down this part into two stages of talking through the critiques and our kind of consensus conclusions on them, then open the floor for any comments or questions on our response. And then after that, I'll address the general concern about the attendance numbers, and then open the floor again for questions or comments about that. So to begin here, the three critiques that we have heard are: one, about general discontent with the music in the worship service. The second was that the services are running too long on Sunday mornings. And then the third is general dissatisfaction with my preaching style on Sunday mornings. So I'm going to address those in turn. So for the general discontent about the music, there's some people who are struggling to sing along with the new music being introduced on Sunday mornings. And the tunes and melody lines are unfamiliar, both for the congregation and for the song leaders themselves. And the result is that people are struggling to get involved in worship because they're trying to find the melody and are struggling to join in. But there are also other members of the congregation who are concerned about bringing new families into the congregation. And so they're wanting to sing more contemporary Christian music that you might hear on K-Love or other radio stations that they would be familiar with, as a way to help them feel more comfortable and more welcome in the worship environment on Sunday morning. And this might require us singing along to pre-recorded music tracks rather than Debbie or Carolyn playing the piano, if accompaniment from them is not possible. And so in response, we as a combined group considered a few different possibilities of improving our Sunday worship. The song leaders agreed that they recognize that their own unfamiliarity with the songs is affecting the worship experience. So they're planning on having an additional practice each week where they're getting together with Debbie in order to practice the new music so they are confident in it themselves and they can lead us well during Sunday morning services. We're interested in introducing 1 or 2 new songs a month and singing them repeatedly during that month so that they become more familiar to the congregation. So Debbie and Carolyn and myself met as the worship planning committee on Thursday of this past week, and any new song that we are introducing to the congregation, we're singing it at least twice during that same month so we can get more familiar with it. And then we also agreed that we are willing to sing along to pre-recorded music because we've done that in the past with Agnus Dei and a few other songs that we've played the video for on the screen during the service. The biggest thing that we all agreed on is that we as leaders need to hear from the congregation what worship music you like. So if you're on the side that prefers the traditional hymns, if you have hymns that we haven't sung in a while that you would like us to sing more, let myself or Debbie or Carolyn know, or one of the deacons. If you're on the contemporary music side and you would like to hear more of that, share those songs with us. And really, if you're passionate about seeing this improve, we would welcome you to join the worship planning committee, because we meet every few months to plan out the worship services for the following 2 or 3 months. And previously we had 5 or 6 people on there. Right now it's down to myself and Debbie and Carolyn. And we value additional input of music that you guys enjoy, and you might know of songs that are contemporary that we might not know of. So if you are able to join us for that, we would be happy to have you join us on that committee. But at the very least, we would ask you just to share your music suggestions with us so that we can start incorporating them on Sunday mornings, and hopefully we can help have a blended worship service of more traditional and more contemporary together. The second critique was services running too long, especially the monthly communion services. One church member told me that some other members were speculating that families are leaving the church because we don't get out of our services before noon. And I know that longer services are difficult for the older members, just physically. It can hurt for a long time to sit upright, and sitting for long periods in the service is painful. I also know that Nicole and the other workers in the kids ministry, The longer services requires more guidance over the kids, and so you might run out of activities for the kids to complete, and then it just becomes chaos downstairs. So I want to avoid that as well. And personally, I try to be conscious of how long I make my sermons during my weekly preparation. And I'm generally aiming in my written notes for around 20 to 25 minutes of speaking. But as I get into the sermon itself, I naturally might digress or expand on that more, so it gets a little bit longer. And so it's hard for me to tell in the moment how long the service might go, depending on the flow of the sermon. But at the meeting, the group agreed to having one service a month, being the communion service, that is slightly longer than others is acceptable. We didn't have any verifiable numbers to measure how long services have been, so we were not sure how accurate the complaints of length have been. But I went back myself through our live streams, starting with January of this year, all the way up until I put this together last couple weeks, so early July. And I calculated out the average length of our services. And on communion Sundays, our services last, on average, about 75 minutes. And our other services during the month average around 64 minutes long. So based on this data, the charge that our services don't finish until noon is simply not accurate. The longest service this year, according to our live stream, ended at 11:49. So we are conscious of this 11-minute difference between the communion and normal worship services, and that time difference comes down to just the time it takes to distribute communion. And so those will naturally continue to be a little bit longer than the others. But I also know that the rhythm of reading Psalm 103 as a responsive reading at the end of communion, I've heard from a few church members that they don't receive much spiritual benefit from that, and it just adds on to the length of the service. So I can remove that from our monthly rhythm to help close the gap between the two services. But in general, we should just have the expectation that the communion services will run a little bit longer as part of the natural order of things. The final critique was dislike of my preaching style. And I know that some of the complaints about the service length that I just addressed were likely due to people becoming bored or disinterested in the sermon, and that just makes it feel like the service is running longer than it actually does. But when we met together as a group, the deacons and trustees all agreed that they fully support my ministry here, and they agreed that I've improved a lot in my preaching over the last year and a half here. And I agree that my preaching still needs improvement. This is my first time doing it as a pastor, so I'm sure that my preaching will evolve over time as I get more experience, and I'll refine my sermon preparation process and improve that. But ultimately, similar to worship planning, I will struggle to improve if I don't get your feedback. So if you find something that I said was unclear or confusing, let me know so I can help either clarify that to you specifically or clarify that in future messages. If there was a story or illustration that I used that you found particularly helpful, let me know, because I'll be able to incorporate more illustrations like that in the future. If you want more detail about how to apply a passage that is preached on, let me know, because I'm happy to meet together with you in person to talk through that more and develop my skill of applying passages in future sermons. And this discussion with me doesn't have to be just at the end of the service. I'm happy to talk with you over the phone or meet with you in person in order to hear about your constructive critiques in more detail. And that's really the only way that I'm going to learn what you like and dislike in my preaching. And the basic fact of the matter is that the vast majority of people have never said anything to me about my preaching. So I don't know whether it has been effective to you or not. Thankfully, Elvin and Bill Smith last year, when I was at the start of the Nicene Creed series, they came to me and said, hey, a lot of people didn't like how you structured that, and so we recommend you go a different direction. And so I tried to pivot, and for what I could tell, people seemed to like it better. No one ever told me what they liked about it, so I don't really know. But that's just one example of ways that your interaction with me will help aid the improvement of my preaching long term. So that's all three critiques. So I want to open the floor now if any of you all have comments or questions that you want to share about what our conclusions were. Yeah. And just as a side note, for those of you who submitted the surveys to me and put them in the office, thank you for that. I'm going to take this week to look over those. I haven't gotten a chance to collect those yet, but I will be looking at the comments that you included in those as ways for improvement. Yeah, Alvin.
I think that what I hear, and that's what I say, I'm here for simplicity.
Mhm.
There's messages that's preached, and you use 10 different illustrations.
Mhm.
Where you could have got the point across with one or two of those.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're losing people.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? I'm just
Yeah.
being honest with you.
Yeah.
because I want to help you.
Mhm.
And there was one service, there was 14 different Bible verses
Yeah.
used in one. There was enough scripture and stuff that you could use that for 6 months.
Mm.
I'm just saying, I'm not a preacher.
Yeah.
But your illustrations were good, but we don't need 6 to 8 of them in one message.
Yeah.
If you remember, my cousin came one Sunday as a preacher,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and he said, this guy's on top. But he said he used enough scripture and stuff that I would use for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I think that's because of you. He said, that's me when I come right out of seminary.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it.
Mhm.
Come to your point a little quicker and maybe not use as many, and then you're not going to lose the people. People are sitting there and think, here, we heard this, but here's another illustration.
Yeah.
I agree with them. Come to your point earlier in the service so that people aren't playing minutes going on because we use 2 or 3 illustrations.
Yeah.
And I just, the one Sunday, Becky and I was sitting there and she was jotting down, and there was 14 different Bible verses that we use to get the point across. Well, that's great, but that's enough scripture that you can use for
Yeah.
5 messages instead of 1.
Yeah.
That's just what I'm saying. And like I told you before, I got the back and I'm not supportive. And I think people need to be fair to you and come to you instead of telling me or telling somebody else.
Yeah.
And I tried to say that. To be fair to Nathan, let's do it to Nathan. Because I think you're open-minded enough to try and change with people's lives, and you gotta be your own person too.
Yeah.
And, preach what's on your heart with the Lord leads you.
Yeah.
That's just the way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And actually, Walt had made the same point at the combined meeting about the number of verses being a little bit overwhelming for people. So I've tried to intentionally decrease that amount. No. Yeah, yeah.
I've listened to several pastors that like this one. I give you one that I've been listening to, and I still want to pass that on to you because I think even his illustrations and stuff, you can learn from that.
Yeah.
It's like, you have time for a story, and you've got everybody's
Mm.
attention. So use that illustration and feed it into, but I want to pass that on to you because I'm kind of hooked
Mm.
on this guy during the week. I listen to him, and it's like, my gosh, he could talk for a half hour, and it seems like 5 minutes, just because he's drawing you into his message
Yeah.
of everyday living, and then he takes that and says, where are you in your walk with Christ? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And use that illustration. So that's kind of more in line. Use your life. You've got stories, so draw that in so people know where you're coming from, and then, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
It needs to be more down where this farm goes, where I am. The whole farm. But I'd rather have something based to me on everyday living, and here's what I live through, and then yet I took it and did this with it, and if that can help you,
Yeah.
that's my opinion on it. And it does bother me that there's people who's not coming, and Becky and I just tried to follow up on some of them. That's all you can do. But I do think that's where we're falling short as a church. We're not following up enough on some of the people that was coming pretty faithful, and if there's a reason why
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I will get to the attendance numbers in a second, but if there is anyone else who has a comment, yeah, right. Oh, Liz. Mhm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, that's fair. Marvin, were you going to say something? Have I conveyed anything that made divorce seem, or conveyed any message about divorce to you? I'm sorry. Yeah. Hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. And just to make sure, are you able to hear me okay with how loud I'm speaking currently? Okay. Yeah, so I know in my sermon back on July 5th that I mentioned Trump being twice divorced as a passing comment. That was not meant to be a indication on the general morality of divorce and remarriage in that sermon. I'm really sorry that happened to you, and that was not my intention to convey that to you, so I apologize. I wouldn't be as flippant in discussing as divisive and hard of a topic as divorce and remarriage, just with a passing comment like that. So I apologize that the way that I said that conveyed that I didn't care for divorced people to you, because that was not my intention. I'll work hard at trying to convey my intention better in future sermons. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Well, I believe I've spoken, at least in passing with you, a few times, but I agree with you that I haven't had the chance to meet together with a lot of the people in the congregation as much as I would like to, at least for the first half of this year, mainly because Pierce has gotten Celeste and I so sick so often, and I haven't wanted to pass on any diseases to any of the older people in the congregation. So yeah, I apologize to you and to Liz that I haven't spoken with you consistently since you've been coming here, because I do appreciate your attendance here. I would like to be able to meet together with you in person when you have freedom in your schedule to do so. So I'll work on doing better at introducing myself to more people in the congregation. Gotcha. Okay.
My understanding is the congregation wants more presence, Pastor Nathan, at the board reading, shaking hands, healing. Yes, I'm here with you. Hello. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Yeah.
What I was hearing out of it is, we want to be seen and known, we want to feel personal.
Yeah. And yeah, that's fair. That's something I can work on. Yeah. Okay. Anything else before we move to the attendance? Okay. I know we've been here a while, so I don't want to take too much more of your time. But with the decline in attendance numbers, when we met together as a group, I let the deacons and trustees know that generally the statistics of attendance that we have here are not that far off from national averages. So according to the most recent data that I could find, the median church size, so right in the middle, is 70 people across the United States. So at our largest, we hit around 70 to 75 people in the year and a half that I've been here, and we average maybe 40 to 45. Does that sound right? Yeah. So given our location here outside of Troy and Piqua and the cultural trends throughout the US, I encourage the group to have realistic expectations about how many people are likely going to attend here in the future. It may be that we will never reach the attendance numbers that this church had back in the 1990s and 2000s when Joe Hyde was here, or even Dale Adkins' numbers. From what I understand, he had an average attendance of around 130 people at the end of his tenure here. And I hope that we grow. And I pray to God that he brings new families into the church, but we should not be surprised if the church stays under 100 people in attendance, just with the state of our culture and our location here. And I think with those more realistic expectations of attendance numbers here, we can recognize that our current level of attendance isn't necessarily life-threatening to the congregation. I think long-term, obviously, as our congregation ages, then we will naturally decrease in numbers and we'll need to refill with younger families. And that's part of the goal of having LifeWise here, is that hopefully we'll have more families coming here and attending long-term. But as far as the actual cause of the decline that we've experienced in my year and a half here, the obvious two factors are several church members passing away and more people becoming homebound because of the medical challenges that they're experiencing, like Jim Ely and several other people in the congregation. And I'm not going to comment that much on those circumstances because we can't really control for that. That's just what's going to happen. But there are 4 or 5 families who have voluntarily left the congregation in the time that I've been here. And to my knowledge and the knowledge of the deacons and trustees, each of those departures was caused by unresolved interpersonal conflicts that those families had with other church members. So it was not because of anything that we were doing here in worship services that they had an issue with. It was either the families had problems with other members that they would not address openly, or their attempt at reconciliation was made, but it was unsuccessful. And so I think these cases reveal an underlying failure of our church to follow Jesus' teaching in Matthew 18, where he says that if there is someone that has sinned against you, then you should go to them one-on-one and talk to them and tell them how they have harmed you and to give them the opportunity to repent. But I think all of these cases show us that our tendency is either to bottle up our anger that we experience towards other people and to never confront the other person about their wrongdoing, or we gossip about the other person and the perceived or actual wrong that they did against us. And I think as Paul says in Galatians chapter 5, verse 15, we are biting and devouring and consuming one another instead of serving one another through love. And I think Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel said it well, that the opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference. And as Jesus says in the Gospel of Luke, that the mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. So these breakdowns in relationship are wounding our hearts, and these wounds are leading to indifference about the state of the church. And so we must seriously consider whether we want this church to stay around for another 5, 10, or 20 years. And if we want it to stay around, then we should remember from our study of 1 John last year that we know we have passed from death to life because we love our brothers and sisters. And the one who does not love remains in death. So in order to overcome this indifference that we currently have here in our congregation, we need to push deeper into love, deeper into prayer, and deeper into communion with God if we want to stop surviving and start thriving as a congregation. And that would be my general call to you in light of this declining attendance. Now, based on those comments, do you have any questions or comments? Yeah, Terry? Yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, the plan right now, I've been working with Allison, the director of LifeWise. Our plan is to host a back to school celebration here at the church on August 29th. And she has offered to purchase the food for the event, and then we would rent the inflatable and other items and combine our efforts so that the families who have been attending LifeWise in the last 6 months, as they're entering into the new school year, they'll be able to get to know us and our congregation at that event and just know where the building is at and just be more familiar. And then we can also have the opportunity of serving these families in our community and potentially building friendships with them and using that as a way to draw more families in. So that will be at least one way that we're hopefully trying to bridge that gap. And then ideally, as we enter into the new school year and we have those 40, 50, 60 kids coming back again, then as they get familiar, they're interested in inviting their parents to come, and we might be able to send flyers with them as they go home with more information about the church and things like that. But that's the general strategy right now of using LifeWise. Yeah. 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 That's a good idea. Yeah. We'll need people to run the popcorn machines and snow cone machines and other things. So, or guard the inflatables. So yeah, we'll definitely do volunteers for that. Yeah. All right. Oh, yes. Mm.
We'll do that next time, I promise. I'll run around with one.
We have microphones back there. They have microphones for that. They're on the sides. They have them.
Mark. He's back there.
I thought about doing it, but I'm not moving too good today. So that's why I said I thought, yeah, because I have trouble here. So too. So we'll do next fiscal meeting, we'll try to have 1 or 2 people, that way you're not running back and forth on each side.
Yeah.
And when somebody has comment, if you're not free, all you gotta do is hold it somewhere in front of you, and it'll help.
Yeah.
Kind of sorry for that today.
Ron. Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's been kind of hard listening to everything going on. We're trying to present the gospel to people, and it can't only be through Pastor Nathan. It's got to be with all of us. So what I'm going to say is, what are you doing here at the church or in this community? And I don't look at just you, I look at myself. What are we doing to try to grow the church? To try to get involvement with the whole congregation? We need to support Pastor Nathan. We need to let him know that we're there, we've got his back. We need to be able to try and get together and to work together to try to bring other people into the church. I don't know if I can say everything I've been thinking, but it's just, I know didn't know for sure if I wanted to be on the deacon board when they asked me. But I know early on, a few years ago, when they asked me that if this is where God wants to use me, he'll put me in that spot. Not that I know everything, I don't know much, but he'll show me and he'll guide me and he'll put me where I need to be. So I'm asking you, where can God use you here in the church to bring others into the congregation or to spread his word to those that need it? I look at myself too. I'm not just looking at everybody else here. I look at myself. What can I do? So just think about that.
Yeah, Becky. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I know the deacons and I have been talking about putting together an actual set schedule of visitation where we can all meet with people, both for just general getting together with the congregation, but also following up with people who may have been missing and things like that. So that's definitely something we want to work on. Yeah. All right. Well, if there's no other comments, then I'll pass along to Bill here to close things out. I think so.
Okay. I will give you the results now of the voting. There was 30 votes cast. There was 28 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstain, so it did pass. So. What? Well, Chuck, you gotta make an effort, buddy. You gotta say, here's my. Okay, all right. There was 29 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstain. Official count. All right. Now, yes, it is, 65%. So it's more than that, significantly more than that. I'm gonna move on. Any old business? We've covered a lot of ground today. So is there any other old business that we want to talk about? No. Any other, we'll call new business beyond what we've already talked about? No. I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a first? We have Chris. Pardon? Okay. We have a first with Chris. Is there a second? We want more, okay. Cindy. Thank you, Cindy. All right. There's a motion and a second on the floor to adjourn the meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye for the ceasing of the meeting. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.